It's the movie that continues to make waves throughout Hollywood, the most expensive epic of all time.
What has the Titanic done to film history and big budget pictures? Today we're diving into the untold details behind James Cameron's $200 million film with entertainment writer Paula Parisi, who spent hundreds of hours interviewing Cameron and his creative associates for her new book, Titanic, and the making of James Cameron.
Plus, author Bruce Caplan has spent years studying the Titanic's tragic maiden voyage, but now, more than 8 decades after the unsinkable ship met its unthinkable fate, Caplan is raising some startling new theories in his new book, The Sinking of the Titanic. Actually, it's an old book that was written just weeks after the 1912 disaster, but Caplan took his tattered old copy of that book and reworked it. And please welcome our guest to Northwest Afternoon. Good to have you here. It seems like the Titanic craze will not stop, and this has been your passion your entire life, studying the Titanic.
Since I was 10, right?
Since you were just 10 years old. And I'm wondering, you both have done so much research. What was the biggest surprise for each of you? For you, Bruce, what was it?
Oh, to me, was finding out that the ship was on fire before it left Southampton, that it was a huge coal fire, 170 tons of coal, that it spontaneously combusted, and that continued on till the moment that it hit the iceberg.
Oh, I want to touch on that. And Paula, how about you?
I think that the budget skyrocketed to $200 million. That was about as big a surprise as the fact that the Titanic sank, I think, to Hollywood.
The fact that nobody was watching this budget, that it just kept on
Yes.
getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
No one knew how much was being spent until it was too late.
Wow. What was the story behind this fire? Because I had not heard that before.
The ship had caught on fire before it left Southampton, and the White Star people decided they didn't want to delay the inaugural voyage, so they just told everybody in the crew to keep their mouths shut.
You mean they knew it was on fire before they left?
Absolutely, they knew it was on fire.
And there are records of this?
There are records of that. They knew it was on fire, and it's on my in my book on page 31. It's on the internet on the U.S. Government Department of Energy. They cite that.
So what did that fire do in terms of the actual, when it hit the iceberg? Did it impact the collapse of the ship?
Absolutely. Nobody knows that for sure, but we do know for sure that the fire did damage the compartments of the Titanic. We do have information on that. And that was brought out in the hearings, in the British inquiry hearings after the Titanic sank.
So if it's a coal-burning fire, this is a really hot fire. Do you think that the ship would have met a similar fate had it not hit an iceberg, since it was on fire anyway?
No, I think that
it could have survived the fire.
For sure, it would have survived the fire. However, you had the two ingredients. You had the fire, which was getting the metal as hot as you could, and then you had thousands of tons of pressure when the Titanic hit the iceberg. And the two together caused the Titanic to sink, in my opinion.
How big was the ship? We always hear how big the Titanic was. How many city blocks is this thing?
Well, in Walter Lord's most famous book called The Night to Remember, which I think everyone who's interested in the Titanic should read, it says it was 4 city blocks long. It was 882.5 feet long, so I think it would, and if you take 5,280, divide it by 12, you find out it was 2 city blocks long in America. Perhaps British city blocks are shorter than ours, but
so
it was
880 feet. I mean, we're talking about the Space Needle plus another half a Space Needle on top of that.
Or you're talking about 2.5 football fields, if that could give you some idea.
So the film won 11 Academy Awards.
Bruce, how much did the original Titanic cost to build?
The original Titanic cost between $7.5 and $10 million.
Wait. So it cost $10 million to build the original. How much for the movie?
$200 million for the movie version.
Oh.
But let's think about what that $10 million was in 1911, 1912 when they made it. How much is that in today's standards?
I think you pointed out before, if you want to go ahead.
I did the math on it. It would be about $600 million by today's standards. So as much as Cameron got this reputation for being a profligate spender, he was still more economic and efficient than the original builders of the Titanic.
And his movie did better than the ship as well, so we should point that out.
It didn't sink, it really sailed.
Do you think it was accurate? There were some mistakes in the movie, and I want to point them out, but how accurate do you think it was?
I commend Cameron. I think the movie was very accurate. There were tiny mistakes about cities that didn't exist at the time, but as far as the saga of the Titanic, I think he did an excellent job.
There's also something about a lake, a man-made lake, that was a mistake, because that lake, was that around at the time of the movie?
Was that in Wisconsin, I think it was.
Yeah.
And it turned out after that it was not, where he said he used to go ice fishing, that actually the lake didn't come until 1917, and yet they were speaking about 1912. But we could pick a little point like that and say that Cameron did a poor job, but basically he's trying to tell the story of what happened on the Titanic, and that really doesn't take away, in my opinion, from the saga of what
No,
those
it's
people went through.
it's an amazing movie as well. It didn't really take much away from the movie, but there was something about the weapon, that there was a gun used in one of the scenes, and it was a gun that you say wasn't around at the time?
The gun was around, right? But the certain serial number or something was different?
It was not. This was not in my book, and I didn't point this out. I don't know if you did, but I know that controversy did come up. Another controversy that came up about Cameron was that Murdoch shoots himself in the movie, and the thing is that I guess that the movie company, not Cameron, apologized to a Scottish city, saying because they said that Murdoch was a hero and that he did not shoot himself. He was at the helm when the ship hit the iceberg. In my book, which was published 1 month after the Titanic, it says that Murdoch did shoot himself and confirms that the movie was right.
Wow.
Big mistakes during the disaster in your book that came out. And some of which we saw in the movie, a lot we didn't though. Give us a couple of those, Bruce, especially the wireless operators. That amazed me.
Well, what a lot of people don't realize is that the wireless operators were working for the Marconi Corporation, and it was just incidental for them to be giving messages to Captain Smith and the rest of the crew. And the California radio man went and wired the Titanic that there were dangerous icebergs ahead a couple hours before the Titanic hit the iceberg, and the reply from the radio man on the Titanic was, "Shut up, shut up, I'm trying to work Cape Race." Well, Cape Race was where he was trying to send the telegrams to make money for Marconi. And
so they're more interested in making money than getting urgent messages to the captain.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so the California radio man, which they think that they were close enough that could have saved everybody, he figured, well, if they don't like my messages, fine, and he just went to sleep. And unfortunately, when he went to sleep, when they did need to contact him, he was in deep slumber, and there was no way to get in touch with the ship.
And maybe more people could have spotted the iceberg had there been more binoculars on board. But here you've got this giant luxury liner, and how many pairs of binoculars?
Well, no, what happened was all the binoculars were left back in Southampton. They forgot them.
All of them?
Well, there was supposedly one pair on the Titanic, but they weren't given to the lookouts. So that was another mistake. They forgot the yes.
But they also spotted the iceberg. Somebody did spot the iceberg, you say, in time in order to save the liner.
Yes, according to Kay Whiteley in my book, which was the first book published, it was published 1 month after the Titanic sank. And according to Kay Whiteley, who was the barber on the Titanic, he talked to the crew members, and they said that they had spotted it in plenty of time to avoid it, and the telephone communication back to Murdoch was ignored. And then finally, about 30 or 40 seconds before they hit the iceberg, they finally got a reply. And by that time, it was too late. He tried to miss it, but it went along the side.
You know what is amazing to me is that
you remember the scene in the movie The Titanic when they're saying women and children first, when they only had so few lifeboats. There were like 20 lifeboats on board. And we are finding out today some of the historical accuracies and inaccuracies about the Titanic itself and about the movie. And Bruce, I want to go to you about the executions on board. It looked like such a frenzy at one point when everybody was running to get into the lifeboats. Were there truly executions, or was that Hollywood making that up?
No, there were absolutely executions, and I verified that in several places. And what happened was some of the immigrants down in steerage that did not understand English the people on the Titanic, the passengers, didn't realize there were not enough lifeboats. They hadn't done an inventory. And so the passengers coming up from steerage were frantic, and they couldn't understand why they couldn't board the lifeboats, and they didn't have the social graces as far as women and children first, and they just wanted to jump on the boats and save themselves, and they were shot in panic.
You know what is interesting is, of those saved, of the 705 saved, how many of them were crew members?
203. And I think what happened was the Social Society of 1912 didn't want to grasp that, so what they did is the historians more or less sanitized the story and didn't tell that.
But the crew actually, a lot of them saved themselves because they knew what? They knew ahead of time?
They knew that they realized there were not enough lifeboats, and they also knew how to get to the lifeboats, and they also realized before anybody else that the ship was going to sink. The average person didn't realize it for over an hour that the ship was in any trouble at all.
Speaking of...
I also want to thank you, Paula, and you, Bruce, for joining us, and
Thank
we'll
you.
be right back just a minute.
Isn't that incredible?
Casey's inside story of the 3-year adventure that rewrote motion picture history, Titanic and the Making of James Cameron, is available at local bookstores. Also available at local bookstores is Logan Marshall's newly released The Sinking of the Titanic, edited by Bruce Caplan.